Pittsburgh Steelers are next. Their over-under's 8.5,
How many teams got
which
left?
is two more, Steelers and Titans.
All right.
Steelers over under 8.5,
It's right where it should be, right?
which is right where it should be. You've got Mike Tomlin. I know what your answer is. You're an analytical guy here, Sam. Mike Tomlin never had a losing season. There's 17 games. They're going to win at least 9. You got to take the over.
Not only has he never done it, but is almost always on the level, right? Like on that game with the final game to come. So 8.5 is exactly where the line needs to be, because that's where, that's his line. It is fascinating. So there's half the people, like, he's polarized people now. Half the people are like, Tomlin never had a losing season. Look at the job he's doing. Amazing work, blah, blah, blah. The other half of people are like, when was the last time you won a playoff game, right? The other guy's been run out of town for the recent resume that Mike Tomlin has. Like, he's reaching that sort of Mike Shanahan Denver era, right? Where it's like, I mean, this is nice, but we're not winning, right? We're winning games. We're not winning championships. Those 2 Super Bowls are fading into the distance.
But don't you see why we spend so much time talking about the QB? Because the only difference in the Mike Tomlin discussion is the level of the quarterback. Because when he had Ben Roethlisberger, who was QB, he was somewhere between QB 5 and 8 of his era. I don't think that's a controversial statement to say Brady, Manning, Rodgers, Breeze, special tier of elite, Roethlisberger, and a bunch of others in a second tier of quarterback in that era. That's what Mike Tomlin had. And when he had that guy, they snuck into a Super Bowl in 2008. They snuck into a whole bunch of AFC championships. They were a very good team. The only thing that was different was Roethlisberger got old, got worse for a couple of years, and then he had Kenny Pickett. So that's what's changed with Mike Tomlin. So to me, it's like, when you look at it in totality, oh, Mike Tomlin can't be the guy to get over the hump and win a championship. Like, just get him another top 8 quarterback, and he probably can. And it is kind of impressive that with Kenny Pickett and with old man Roethlisberger, they were winning 8 or 9 games, right? So,
and isn't it funny?
That's how you look at Tomlin.
When you rewind and go back to that, the Mike Shanahan comp, I mean, you can make the same argument with Denver, right? Like, when they had John Elway, and okay, even at the end of John Elway's career, when they won the championships, it was like a faded version of Elway, but they offset that by Terrell Davis and other talent, et cetera, et cetera.
Elway was still really good at that point, though.
Yeah.
He was still very good.
But it was also, it then, when it stopped winning championships and just became winning seasons, it was a post John Elway landscape, right? Which featured like Jake Plummer and Jay Cutler and, the guys that didn't become that, right? So there's a huge degree to which these coaches are all almost, not entirely, but like dependent on the quarterback. If you don't have a guy capable of doing this, you're not going to do better than just sneak a winning season and maybe get the playoffs every year. I mean,
Kyle Shanahan and Andy Reid are the 2 guys that you could point to that have multiple quarterbacks that they've elevated, multiple quarterbacks that they've won with, multiple quarterbacks that have done better with them than their career baseline.
But even then, right? Like, literally, Andy Reid got gotten rid of from Philadelphia because he couldn't get over the hump, right? Let's say maybe he did wonders. Like, Donovan McNabb didn't look good outside of an Andy Reid, environment. Donovan McNabb went, like, all we saw from him outside of Andy Reid wasn't good, right? So maybe him actually getting Donovan McNabb to a Super Bowl was a work of wonder that deserves more credit. But, like, Reid ultimately got run out of Philadelphia because he couldn't get that win. Like, eventually they were like, all right, fine, we've seen enough. It's not going to happen. Done. And Shanahan still hasn't quite gotten, he's the easiest one to make the case for. We're like, okay, he's elevated a bunch of quarterbacks people didn't think had any shot at doing this.
Like, I know. I'm not saying they all won Super Bowls. I'm saying multiple years, multiple quarterbacks of them being elevated and bringing them to a high level. Like, Tomlin hasn't shown that he can do that. He's shown that he's got this baseline of being good as a team, but when you give him the quarterback, hey, they can make a championship run.
And winning a championship is such a crazy high bar to set that it's like almost every coach is eventually going to get fired if that is your baseline, right? I think winning playoff games is a more reasonable thing, which is why, Dallas is in the situation they're in. But like the point being, that's hard enough in itself, right? Even Kirk Cousins is a better quarterback than most of the people we've been talking about in this dynamic. And he trapped the Vikings in this world of, you're probably good enough to make, get to in and around 500, just get over 500. And that's going to either put you into the playoffs or it's going to put you just outside looking in any given season. Like, that's the reality of the world if you don't have an elite quarterback most of the time.
All right, let's discuss this exact team then. If the picture that I painted there, and I went down, I think I got caught up in, is Tomlin the right guy for the job? Has he been maxed out in Pittsburgh? I've gone down that road and thought about it. But when I'm looking at it in totality, what if you did give him a top 8 quarterback? So this year, I'm going to take the over as well. Believe in Tomlin. They're going to win their 9 games. What if can they get Russell Wilson back to that top 8 status? Because that's how I view Russell Wilson. Top 8 quarterback in his era, same bucket as Roethlisberger, similar career where they started out a little game managery, winning a lot of games. More was put on their plate and they still produced. That leveled off for Russ earlier than Roethlisberger, earlier than expected. Can they get him back into that top 8 or top 10 territory? Because if they randomly got 2015, 16, 17 Russell Wilson, this team's unbelievable, right? And none of us are expecting that, but could they get anywhere close? And if they can, yeah, they're really dangerous.
Yeah, I do think the Arthur Smith plus Russell Wilson dynamic, offense coordinator plus quarterback for this team has an extremely broad range of outcomes. Like, I can imagine a world where that combination of scheme and quarterback actually produces really good results. And you get certainly the best version of Russell Wilson we've seen since his real peak years in Seattle. I can also imagine a world where it just doesn't work. And Russell Wilson is just not the type of quarterback that stylistically does the things that Arthur Smith finds most important. And it ultimately blows up completely. And he's not starting for half the season, right? We turn to Justin Fields at some point during the year. And I got to say, there's a big part of me that wants to see that happen. Not because of any ill will to Russell Wilson, but because I actually am maybe more fascinated by what the Arthur Smith plus Justin Fields combination can produce. I'm not ready yet to write off the idea that Justin Fields can become a good high-level quarterback. And maybe it is in a limited might be a pejorative term here, but maybe it is in a specific type of offense, right? Like, there was always that debate of how much did Ryan Tannehill only look good because of that offense? How much did he need that play action heavy system to get high end elite play? And if you plucked him out of Tennessee and dropped him somewhere else, he'd go back to looking like, Miami Ryan Tannehill. Maybe Fields will always need a specific offense to play at that kind of level, but I do think it's possible he could play at that kind of level. And I'd be really interested to see what he looks like in this Arthur Smith offense. Maybe not to the point where I would give him the starting job, right away. Like, just say, hey, Russ, thanks, but no thanks. Like, chill on the bench. I think I'd probably give Russell Wilson first crack at it, but I'd actually be quite ready. Like, I'd be, I wouldn't have a lot of time for Wilson's struggles before I turned it over to Fields.
I'll say this. I think the league, we're entering, ready for this? We're entering a golden age of QB rehab prospects. How about that?
Okay.
What we've just seen with Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield, say, having their best seasons in year 6, 7, 8, or in Geno's case, 9 or 10.
Right.
The Justin Fields as a backup, Zach Wilson as a backup, Kenny Pickett as a backup, Sam Howell as a backup, right? I mean, all of these guys who have shown some level of good, not enough good that I want to invest in him as my starter, certainly not. But as a backup, who maybe this year, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now comes good, I think it's a special age for that, Sam. Jameis Winston still in that bucket. So I just think it's interesting. Like, I would hold on to those guys and see. I'm with you. I'm fascinated by Fields if he does get a shot here. All right, let's wrap it up. Tennessee Titans. We both went over for the Steelers.